Hi there FFTCG fans, welcome back to my channel. Now before I get started on this video I do want to quickly apologise that I haven't been releasing deck profiles or anything for FFTCG for a couple of weeks. It's because I've been super busy and my Opera Omnia following has really sort of jumped a lot quicker than I thought it would, so I've had to kind of balance the two together. But don't worry, I have not forgotten my FFTCG fans, I haven't forgotten my following that came from that, and I wanted to bring you guys a new deck profile today, despite the fact that we have Opus IX coming up. That's going to celebrate the release of Shadowbringers, because I wanted to give you my take on the FF14 Scions. There's a slight twist in the deck that I'm sure a couple of people have done before me, but a lot of people may not be aware of. So if you're interested in playing Scions between now and Opus IX's release, another thing to note about this deck is that it is an Earth deck that doesn't run Daedaluma and therefore will not be affected by the banning of Daedaluma that's coming shortly. Then stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we go into the deck profile and all that kind of stuff, I do want to remind you guys to check out the social links in the description box below, including my Twitch channel, which I have actually been playing FF14 on recently. I'm still on Stormblood, so I'm playing catch up a little bit towards getting to Shadowbringers, but I'm going to get there, and if you guys want to come and join me or help me with anything, then that would be very much appreciated and I'd love you for it. There's also my Discord channel where we all talk about all sorts of things FFTCG related, Opera Omnia related, FF14 related. There's all sorts of people on there. And my Patreon channel for anyone who wants to jump up and get my early access videos and all sorts of extra benefits from that. Now this deck profile for Scions is classic Earth Lightning Scions with a slight twist in there, but the forward lineup is very, very standard fare. It's very just solid Scions, just get them down as quickly as possible. And you know, you've got Urianger, Ida, Papalimo, Thancred. There's only 2 Thancred in the deck though, because I think he is slightly less important than the others, and I wanted to make room for some other little extra plays in the deck as well. And Ishtola obviously, but we've also got some other forwards in there. I feel that Noctis and Cecil kind of are a must-have in a lot of any kind of Earth deck nowadays, because they're just fantastic removal. Noctis wards off pretty much any aggro deck going. There's combos to be had in the deck as well. I did even consider putting a singular Cactuar into this deck because it combos so well with Noctis and Cecil as something that could be pulled back with Urianger, but there's a few options of monsters that I wanted to go over for you guys, but I'm going to wait till we get to the monster section of the deck before we do so. And then Veritas of the Dark, I've seen quite a few people running Veritas of the Dark in Scions, but not at 3, and therefore I wanted to kind of try out 3 for a specific reason in the deck, which I'm sure you can all see in the deck list. The other card I did want to mention, because I haven't mentioned much when it comes to Opus IX recently, and in all fairness, part of that is because I can't really figure out where a lot of the Opus IX cards go. It seems like there's not been a card as of yet that's really struck me as something that has to be played now. Though saying that, the new Gabranth that was spoiled fairly recently would fit quite nicely into here as something that adds to the EX count, allows you to search for either Cecil or Veritas, and you can even play around with stuff like that. Wall is a strange card nowadays, because while this card is still really good and combos particularly well with Ida, I find Wall actually to be a little bit on the slow side nowadays, so I've only gone for 2. You know, there's no way to give it haste, although there was an option I was considering in my monster lineup that would give him that. But I think that Wall needs to be here, but I'm hoping that Opus IX gives us something with a bit more punch to it than Wall has an interplay effect, or maybe even another Scion coming out would be great, or something that just figures itself out that way. I haven't gone for forward Alphino, and I decided to go with the backup one purely because I think it's so important to have those backups down quickly, but I'll go over that when we get to the backup section. But I wanted to kind of make sure that the fundamentals of a Scion deck were here, with very, very slight alterations to cater to a particular combo in the deck that I think you'll really enjoy. While I know the trend nowadays is to try and reduce the number of backups that we're running in the deck at all recently, and I completely agree with it, I've been really toying with a couple of different deck ideas that run fewer backups, but I wanted to run 16 in this deck because I think it's so important to get those 5 or 4+1 Scion backups down as soon as possible. So Alphino, Kryl, Alize, Minfilia, and then either Minor or Louis-Soir. I've gone with triple Louis-Soir just because the thing I've noticed most about Scion decks is that if you don't get Alize down very quickly, the deck tends to struggle. So having the Louis-Soir is going to absolutely help with that, and it's more lightning CP to pay for Urianger and Thancred. So you're going to need some sort of lightning CP as much as we can get it. Minor, I would love to run more copies of it. If you really wanted to, you could drop a Louis Soir down to 2 and then run a second minor, because being able to grab extra copies of Cecil, being able to grab your Ida's back is really useful. There's lots of really nice things that you can do with it. But honestly, the meat of this deck is actually going to be in its monster portion, and I know there's only 4 in the deck currently, but there's so many options for monsters you can run in this deck that I think it's great to see. The summons in this deck are actually super simple. Hecatonka is there for multiple reasons. It's a fantastic card with Veritas of the Dark. It's a fantastic card with Ida if she gets really big and she deals extra damage due to Papalymo. It's really strong with Thancred if you can make it so that he takes less damage than he deals. It's just a really good card all around. It also deals with Wind Ishtolas as well, because the damage is treated as combat damage. So Ishtola kind of forces herself to have to cancel a 2 CP card, which can be really helpful. That being said, there aren't that many abilities in here like this. There's not that many summons that Wind Ishtola has to deal with, but a lot of your stuff revolves around damage. So you kind of want to be able to deal with her if you can. And then Ramuh dulls things, deals damage, it deals with monsters. There's a fair amount of monster hate in this version of this deck as there is, but there's a lot of wiggle room to be had when it comes to the monster lineup. And then I'm going to talk about the monster lineup now, because the main thing that I want to touch on in here is a card that until now I've utterly despised, and everybody knows how much I hate it, but in this particular deck it's actually very strong, and that's Magic Pot. Magic Pot allows for plays with Scions that they really shouldn't be allowed to do, and it also combos exceptionally well with Veritas of the Dark. If you have a Magic Pot and a Veritas of the Dark out, bear in mind you've played the Veritas of the Dark, so they're going to have to kill one of their guys for that. If your opponent has 2 forwards or more, you're really going to bottleneck your opponent, because the second they play their second forward, you're just going to crack Magic Pot, kill your own Veritas and play another one down, and that's going to force them to sacrifice two guys or even their backups, which is really helpful. But Magic Pot also works extremely well with Ida and with Ishtola. It actually works very well with any Scion, to be honest, because of Alisaie. Alisaie is absolutely paramount to any Scion deck, so you're going to want to get her out as soon as possible. But in this particular version of the deck where you run Magic Pot, say you have Ida and 4 other Scions out, so she's 10k, one of them's Papalymo, so she's dealing 2,000 more damage. You can play an Ida from your hand, attack with her, deal something 7,000 damage, hopefully killing it, deal your opponent a point of damage. Then you Magic Pot, sacrifice the Ida into a new Ida, which comes in active, has haste because of Alisaie, and then you can just do it again. There are times where your opponent will have a really larger amount of board than you would like them to have, and you just wipe it clean and deal your opponent 2 points of damage. Because this works so well with Ishtola and Veritas of the Dark and Cecil and Ida, you just get crazy amounts of value out of Magic Pot. Now, the second slot in the monster lineup, because I like having 4 monsters because I don't want the whole deck to hinge on Urianger, and similarly, I've only gone with 2 Magic Pot because as much as the combo is really cool and very powerful, there are going to be times where you see Magic Pot and not the pieces to make it, and there are times where and you can always pull Magic Pot out with Urianger because it's quite easy to get him in and out. So I really don't think that 3 is necessary, and I'd rather save the slots that are extra for a more malleable position. Dragon is just a nice pick. It's removal for monsters like Death Gaze, where Ramuh can't kill them. It's just nice to have. It's extra forward removal, though we have an absolute butt ton of forward removal in the deck. One thing I did consider was to run a singular copy of Electric Jellyfish in this deck, because I had actually been experimenting with Electric Jellyfish and Zidane for a little while on recommendation from my friend Tim, and it worked really quite well. And Electric Jellyfish in here might actually be really strong, because it means that you're ever so slightly less reliant on Alisaie, because you could always play Electric Jellyfish so that you've got a haste granter that isn't Alisaie. So say you play Urianger and you have a singular Scion backup, you can pull the Electric Jellyfish in, give him haste and attack with him, so that's quite cheeky. And then not only that, but it also, you can sacrifice it to dull things, which means that it's then primed and ready for Ida to deal with, or Cecil to deal with. And then that's a really nice interaction as well. If you really wanted to push it, then you could even run a singular copy of Luminous Puma, because obviously we're only running the 1 minor in the deck, so you could even be really cheeky and try and play Luminous Puma just out of your hand, which is fine. But if you do manage to get 5 Scions out, then Urianger pulling out a Luminous Puma is so much value, it's insane. But I do think that my current taste lies in Magic Pot and Dragoon, or Dragon, not Dragoon, Dragon, because I think that having the extra removal is always going to be helpful. You need to be hitting the ground running when it comes to a Scion deck, so if you can't, then you need as much removal as possible to stop your opponent from beating you down so that you're able to re-establish your own board. So the theory behind this deck is that it's an extremely aggressive deck that celebrates all of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn that are in the deck, but also doesn't fully rely on them, because you have cards like Veritas, Cecil, and Noctis that are just solid cards by themselves. Earth has some of the best single-use cards in the game, and so why not take advantage of them? As I said earlier, when I was talking about the monster lineup, I was thinking about making room for a single Cactuar, because it doesn't have to be on colour for Urianger to pull it back, and I personally am not the biggest fan of Lava Spider. I think it's a bit gimmicky. I think it works quite well with forward Alphino, but we're not running forward Alphino, and I think that that combo in and of itself is quite gimmicky. Having thought that it was going to be quite interesting at the start of the format, it actually turned out to be fairly lackluster. But a Cactuar, it gives you an extra 1,000 points of damage if you need it when you're against something like, when you've got Ida attacking or anything like that. It gives you the ability to use the 10,000 damage as well, which is more removal, which is actually better than Dragon, especially if you have either Noctis or Cecil available to do something. It can be really cheeky. But it's just like, I wanted to kind of keep it just to the 2 colours plus the 3 Veritas of the Dark for simplicity's sake. Liak is quite often a popular choice in an Urianger based deck as well, and I even did consider trying to thin out the Scion engine, because as much as I really like the Scions, you're forced to run cards that generally aren't very good, like Kryl, in order to just get the Scions down. But I tried thinning it out to try and make a smaller engine for it, and it just didn't work out as well as I would have liked. So, I mean, Minfilia is a great card as well. It's a searcher that can break itself to make it as removal and then replace itself, and that's why I wanted a miner in the deck. I really wanted to fit in either Shantotto or 6 CP Minfilia, but I just couldn't find the room for it. But basically, this version of the deck is probably my favourite way to run Scions, but one thing that's nice is that once you've got the core of the deck there, there's actually quite a lot of wiggle room there. I've seen a lot of people run Zeramus. I personally am not the biggest fan of Zeramus. I think that it relies way too heavily on just being an EX. Yeah, it's great when it goes off, it'll kill something and pull back an Ida, but I don't like the deck having to rely too heavily on Ida, and that's my biggest issue with Scions as a whole. So I've tried to make this deck a little bit more well-rounded, so that you can get really strong play with Veritas of the Dark and Magic Pot, or if something happens to your Ida, you can always Magic Pot in response so that the target has changed. There's nice interactions with Magic Pot that you wouldn't be able to get in other decks, purely because Alize exists. So I encourage you guys to try just experimenting with different monster combinations for this particular deck, because I think that it can be very rewarding. So that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to check out all of the social links in the description box below, as I said earlier. As you can see, I've also, in my absence, been experimenting with improving the visual quality of my videos and things like that, you know, like having the nice backgrounds behind me and making sure that everything is as visually appealing to everybody as possible. So don't forget to share out this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications. I will leave the link in the description box as well to the ffdecks.com version of this deck, so that if you want to build it yourself, then you can have it available to you without having to watch the video again. And that's pretty much it from me. I will hopefully be at Summer Cup next week in London. I can't promise anything because I'm actually waiting to hear back from a very, very important job interview. So depending on how that goes, depends on whether I'm going to be able to go or not. But I really hope I get to see some of you players soon. It's been really lovely spending time with everybody over the past few months, and I hope to continue to do so. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Take care.